It's time to make 2025 the year you stop procrastinating and finally write the novel you've been dreaming about. I'm going to share all my tips and tricks with you so you can take the first step in your writing journey today. Happy New Year, by the way. I can't wait to embark on this writing journey with you. My name is Diana Leite. I have a PhD in comparative literature from the University of Texas at Austin, and I've been writing for the better part of the last 10 years. First, we set our writing goals for 2025 together, and then I'm going to discuss all the software and strategies you're going to need to make this year the year you finally finish the novel and have a draft that you can be proud of. As you probably know by now, you likely learned that the hard way. There is no easy way to write a novel. The key to success when it comes to writing is consistency, and that comes out of building a sustainable routine. So we each need to discover which tools work best for us, whether you're a fledgling writer starting your very first novel or an experienced hand working on an old project. The key to writing is tracking how much you write. I know that sounds sort of weird or counterintuitive, but if you don't have a way to track your writing, you're not going to be able to evaluate your progress, and that can become very frustrating when you are dealing with a task that is going to last for months and probably over a year. So first, let's start by setting your goals. And I always talk about realistic goals. Those are goals that need to be achievable, not only for the days when you're feeling 100% and everything's great and you're super productive, but they need to work on the days you're not feeling super great. There are days when you're working and you're just not your best. Your brain is not braining. Your soul is not souling. Your creativity is not creating. And that's part of life. You're not going to have the same level of productivity, creativity, enthusiasm every day of your life. And you need to plan your routine for the worst of your days and not the best of your days, because more likely you're going to be somewhere in the middle, but you need to have a goal that can be accomplished most of the time, regardless of how good or how bad you're feeling on a specific date. So I always try to keep my goals on the lower side, even if I know I can produce more, because if I accomplish my goal or double my goal, triple my goal, that's great, that feels awesome. But if I'm consistently not reaching my goal, that feels terrible. And this is all a game of tricking yourself into writing more. Your goal should include a measurable outcome. In this case, it's probably finishing a novel. So define how many words should that novel have. I used 80,000 words as an example because it's a very realistic size for a book. Science fiction can sometimes be a little bit longer, up to 100,000 words. But remember, if this is your first book, agents are going to have an easier time selling, or you're going to have an easier time selling online through Kindle Unlimited, a book that is a little on the shorter side if you don't have an established audience. Once you have an audience, once your books are selling, then you can work on projects that are a lot longer than that. We also need to be specific about the time frame that we're planning for a book. Obviously, this time frame is never going to be perfect, but setting a goal is going to help you define how many words you're writing every week and if you're hitting your goals, for example. I am a missionary trying to evangelize every writer on using word trackers. Word trackers changed my productivity. I don't think I could have written the dissertation as fast as I did without a successful word tracker that works for me and my writing style. And I don't think I could have written a book in a year without my trusty writing tracker. So that is the number one tool that I recommend for any type of long form writers. The word tracker is going to help you stay accountable, but it's also going to take care of that anxiety that comes from not feeling that you're finishing everything when you're working on this very long project. Before I started using a word tracker consistently, I always had this feeling that I was treading water, and that created a lot of anxiety. I used two word count trackers. The first is a digital one on a spreadsheet, and the second is on my bullet journal. As you can see, my first word count tracker was very basic and I didn't worry about aesthetics or anything, but I've created two new versions of the word count tracker and they are available for you in the link below in the description of this video. So you see that my word count tracker tracks every day in which I'm working. I also like to divide my working periods into weeks. I find that tracking your daily progress can be very difficult because you're not going to be able to write every day. I'm not able to write every day, even though that is my main job. Sometimes you're just not feeling it and there's no forcing it. Last year when I was working on this novel, I had a weekly goal of 2,600 words, and it was a goal that I could easily beat on a single day, but not every day is a super productive day. So I tried to have a goal that was fairly easy for me to beat and even double and sometimes triple, because that meant that if I had a week when I was, we were moving from Missouri to New York, so on that time we were moving, I was very unproductive, but it was fine because I was ahead of my schedule. And that was possible because my goal was very unambitious, which I think is how you should set your goal. You should never be ambitious when it comes to setting your goals. As for my bullet journal word count tracker, I just love bullet journaling. To me, there's nothing like the physical thing, but it was definitely a redundancy. The same information that I had on the online tracker, I had on my bullet journal. And on the bullet journal, the information was a little more vague because I only had the weekly goals instead of the monthly goals. But, to me, there's nothing like the dopamine hit of like painting one of those boxes. And that really helped me stay motivated. My entire life is in my bullet journal. I call my notebooks my second brain, and that works really well for me. But again, if you are only going to use one word tracker, I suggest using a spreadsheet because you're going to want to be able to use that data and process the data at the end of your project, and doing that by hand is a lot harder. Now that we set our writing goals for 2025, let's talk about the software that you're going to use to write your novel. The most common and widely available word processing softwares are Microsoft Word, Google Docs. You also have Scrivener and Focusrite. Honestly, in my opinion, the word processor that you're going to use is the least of your problems. It is not going to make a difference. It is not going to make or break your writing process. In fact, I believe that agonizing about the word processor you're going to use is a great source of procrastination. So really just pick one and don't think about it. Your productivity and the quality of your writing have nothing to do with software. You can write with pen and paper and be a brilliant writer, and you can have the most expensive gear setup, ergonomic chairs, everything, and not be able to write to save your life. Just promise me one thing. You're not going to let not having the perfect software or writing setup stop you from finishing the novel you've been dreaming about for so many years. The only concern that I have personally when it comes to writing software is making sure that my file is saved and that I'm going to have access to it at all times. Make sure that you save a copy on your computer and save a copy on your external hard drive maybe every week. Create a routine, print out a version of your writing, because if all the computers break in the world, you're still going to have the physical copy. Don't trust the cloud. I mean, it's great to have the cloud. I have the cloud. I have copies of my work on the cloud, but I don't want the only copies of my work that I have to be on a third-party server that I could lose access to at any point. Rounding up the software conversation, on top of word processor, you may want to use productivity and focus apps. I think that anything you can use to make you feel more focused is worthwhile. When I was writing my dissertation, me and my writing group started using an app called Study Bunny. It's super cute, so you can set it up so it's tracking your writing time, and you can set different colors for different activities, and it shows you weekly and monthly and graphs. So it's a really good way to gather information. It also gives you that little dopamine hit of finishing something. And with the points you gain from using the app, you can swap them for little clothes and little hats, and you can personalize your study bunny. And it was really funny because me and my writing group, which were all PhD candidates in their final years, and teachers and professors, were having a lot of fun with this app that I think is meant for kids, but whatever works. But the focus app that I've been using a lot right now is Forest. It's a very popular app for focus. One of the features that I love about Forest is that it's going to lock down apps that you select while you're working on your writing. So while I'm writing, my WhatsApp, my Instagram, my YouTube, all my social media platforms are not available to me. Finally, here are my strategies on how to harness your creativity in 2025. My number one writing philosophy is don't let inspiration hold you back. You're not going to be inspired every day. That is not how humans work. So, when I'm feeling less productive or less energized, I try to use certain writing block killers to keep myself consistent. The first of them is the intentional brain dump. A lot of people talk about brain dumps or do brain dumps in the bullet journal community, but I think that there is a second step to brain dumping that is essential if you want to harness them into writing. So empty your brain, write down everything that is crowding your mind. Maybe there's a lot of ideas percolating and your brain just feels really loud, so you want to write until that feeling of loudness is soothed. Once you transfer all those ideas into paper, you don't have to hold on to them so hard anymore, and you can feel that sense of relief from letting go of them after you're done emptying out your mind. You're going to go back into the brain dump and circle down your main ideas, the most important things that you wrote down, sentences that really resonated with you that you want to include in some dialogue, or character descriptions that you found really powerful. And you want to write down a set of steps that you're going to take in order to implement the ideas that you wrote in your brain dump into your draft. You may have written a couple of lines of dialogue that you want to then explore further in your writing practice, or you may have had a new idea for the plot that you then would like to outline. By the end of your brain dump, you're going to have eased yourself into writing. I think that it's a lot easier to transition into writing after a brain dump than it is to just start cold. The second strategy is to write a dialogue. It doesn't need to be the very next dialogue that you're going to include in the novel. It could be something that is going to come later on. Again, the magic of word processors is that you can write things out of order. I mean, people are doing that before computers, but now it's just so much easier to insert a scene or insert a paragraph into your text and reorganize your text. So if you're feeling blocked, it could be useful to skip some transitions or some passages that you're less interested or passionate about in order to ease yourself into writing. On the days when you're feeling more energized or more productive, it can feel a lot easier to tackle those pieces of writing that you find less exciting or more boring or more difficult, or describing a new character that you're excited to introduce into the plot. And oftentimes after writing the scene that you want to write, you can go back and work on those more difficult, more cumbersome parts of the novel. The third strategy I'm going to share is a little different because you're not going to actually be working on the novel, but you're going to be thinking about the novel as a whole. So as my third writing block killer strategy, I like to work on the set of rules that I have created for my work of fiction. So if you're writing science fiction, your novel might take place in a different planet or a spaceship, or if you're writing fantasy, it could take place in a different world. So you're going to have to establish rules for those worlds. A famous example of rule setting in a novel comes from Margaret Atwood, the author of The Handmaid's Tale. Famously, she gave an interview in which she talks about the fact that every single punishment that women suffer in her novel come from a real event in history. She set the rule to ground her novel in reality, even though she is writing speculative fiction in which she's imagining this American dystopia. So those were my main strategies for killing your writing block if you're working on a novel. But before I let you go, I'd like to encourage you to find ways to love the writing process. Finally, I think that one of the most important parts of writing is finding a community, finding people that can support you, that can share the pains of writing, that can commiserate with you, that can cry with you, that can celebrate with you. And I know that finding a community isn't easy. My dissertation writing group was so important, not only for my productivity, but for my mental health. It was so important to me to be able to share my experience with people that understood what I was going through and could support me in real ways. And this is one of the main reasons why I've created this channel, and I hope that this can be the beginning of your search for that community. Suffering is not creative. Loneliness is not creative. The moments when you're going to create the most are the moments when you're feeling the most energized, the most fulfilled, the most joyous, and having that community can really help harness those good feelings. And I hope I can become part of your writing community.